Hello and welcome back to Seeking Witchcraft. I'm your host, Ashley, and today I have on Fee and Kaz, the Seed Sisters, to talk about herbal wisdom, magic, and their new oracle deck, the Sensory Herbal Oracle. Welcome, Fee and Kaz, to the show.
Thank you, Ashley.
Hello.
Hello. Do you guys want to start off and tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Yeah, of course. Hi. So I'm Kaz, and Fee and I have worked together for a long time now, a couple of decades. We met back at the turn of the millennia in London while we were both studying a degree in herbal medicine. And herbal medicine is the study of the science and the history, the compounds within the herbs and how we can work with them for medicine. But there's another side of it, which is the more esoteric and the magic, which is something that we both absolutely love and recognized a kindred spirit in one another.
Yeah, we started working together for our study sessions. We'd come out of the clinic from our white coats and stethoscopes and sort of fling them off on the chair and go out into the woods and play with the herbs and connect with the plants and really bring more of that connected magic on the hoof, we sometimes call it, going out with the plants and seeing what's around us and working together in that way as well to kind of it was a balm for the soul when we met each other on such a kind of medicalized course that we were studying on.
I like that you both went out into the field and, excuse the pun, but got your hands dirty with the plants outside of the classroom. I think that's great. I think firsthand experience is really the way to go, especially when you're dealing with working with these plant materials in a more spiritual or esoteric uh, setting. Now, I know you two have come together and you've created the Seed Sisters. So how did that kind of happen? Like, what did that look like?
Well, both of us had and still have quite a lot of rage within us. We're driven by the the dream to change the status quo and to shift the paradigm, especially the health paradigm. And what we see in today's world with the ecological destruction and difficult social issues that are going on worldwide is a real need for the plants to be centered and nature to be centered. And we we decided actually through tarot. We had a fabulous set of tarot that were Michael Tierra's herbal tarot, and we used to pull a card, ask a question about what we should be doing, pull the card, and work that way. And it was many years ago that we did a reading that basically told us that we should put all our effort and energy into educating others in a very fun, accessible, easy way, a way that can really help people to understand the local plants that grow around them and how to bring them into their daily life.
Well, that's fantastic. And I think it's quite fitting that you started from a tarot deck giving you those messages to now creating your own oracle deck, which we'll talk about in a moment. I personally am a very big fan of oracle decks. I know sometimes some people are like team tarot, some people don't use oracle decks as often, but I've always loved these types of decks. And I know that your new deck, it combines like art and herbal wisdom and elemental magic. So what inspired the creation of this deck, the Sensory Herbal Oracle?
Well, we believe that people have an innate knowledge about plants and that we've kind of forgotten that we're actually part of nature, and in a lot of instances look to animals for that more intuitive connection with plants when we see them foraging for the herbs that might be helpful for them. But actually, when we tap back into ourselves, we know that all of that knowledge is there. But sometimes people need that structure and form, that guidance to help them to reconnect with that inner wisdom, with that knowledge. And creating this set of cards, we began this many years ago. We developed a course that was based on seasonal connections with plants, but also looking at different plant parts, and that people work through over a year. And within that system, it was very clear that the plants were really coming through and bringing their own messages. So what does it mean if there's suddenly a load of lemon balm growing around you, or if you notice the hawthorn flowers in particular that year, or one herb starts to come up in your life? What's the message in those plants? What's it trying to say to you, or what is it that you're needing in that moment? And what we wanted to do with this oracle deck was to give people a tool that, yes, can guide, yes, can teach about the individual plants, but can give you this real connection to the herbs as something more than just something pretty to look at or something that we pick for a medicinal cup of tea, but actually as these kind of plant allies, these real kindred souls or spirits, if you like, that we can work with and help to enhance our lives, really.
Oh, that sounds quite lovely. I think that's such a beautiful explanation of, and I love that you explain like, oh, what does it mean if I'm seeing lemon balm, for example, growing up around me? Because I've definitely noticed plants in areas near me that were not there the years before that I've been curious about.
Yeah, yeah. It's a common thing, isn't it? And then to actually think, oh well, I've noticed that, but where can I find out about what that might mean? And yeah, the cards are great for that.
So for the listeners who have not seen the cards, could you explain a little bit of like what they might look like? I know we are a podcast and not a, a video, but just a general idea of the description.
Well, part of the course that we teach an apprenticeship in sensory herbalism, and part of that course sees people drawing each of the plants, because when we draw a plant in detail, really looking at it maybe through a magnifying glass in some instances, we never forget the what that plant looks like, and we really develop a positive identification. And on the course, we noticed one of our apprentices at the time, her art, just how beautiful it was. Her name's Belle Benfield, and she is the illustrator of our cards. We commissioned her to draw our ideas. And so the cards come in 5 different individual sections, which are element based, and each of the elements has a border that's coloured. And each element, for example, we start with water, has plants, the plant part of leaf. So we sat down with Belle and we discussed, for example, we'll go back to the lemon balm, and we discussed how the lemon balm, because lemon balm is part of the mint family and easily spreads through a garden, we think of her as being extremely generous. And this generosity is what's depicted on the lemon balm card. We see one of the melissae, because lemon balm's Latin name or botanical name is Melissa. So we have this beautiful woman with a bee skep on her head, pouring some milk and honey down over the lemon balm. So each of the cards has a vibe as well, a word that goes with the herb. And you have pictures of the leaves of the herbs, or the flowers, or the roots, or the seeds and fruits. But then you also will have some depiction of the vibe of the word.
So Kaz mentioned that the water element is leaf herb. So there's what defines these as an oracle card is that we have these sort of 5 different elements that connect in with a plant part, but there's also one main element card for each one. So you get 5 element cards at the beginning, and the water card is all about the leaf plant part. The fire card is all about the flowers. The seeds and the fruits are the air. The roots are the earth. And then the spirit is any plant part, but those herbs that particularly speak to some aspect of what it means to being human and having that real interaction with the plants that can really transform and bring really deep messages of healing or where we might be at in our world. So within each of those elements, there's then 7 cards that are 7 plants that we use those plant parts with. So there's 7 leaf cards, there's 7 flower cards, and so on, all the way through to the roots, and then the spirit, the more magical herbs that are in that section.
Were there any particular herbs that surprised you during the process of how it fit in within a particular element?
The herbs, so each herb, we're looking at the plant part. So for us, in living here in the UK, in the temperate world, in the springtime, we see loads of green leaf energy. And we might work with the nettle leaf, for example, and make lots of nettle soups. But then come the autumn, we will be working with the nettle seed. So it's not so much that there's specific plants that worked with specific elements, it's the plant parts, which makes there's a deeper complexity to it there. So I've mentioned nettle. Nettle leaf we have classified there under the water element, but we know that nettle is a hot herb of Mars with a fiery nature. So when you go into the more complex energetics of it all, nettle leaf would be fire of water.
Ah, I like that explanation. That's really cool.
I think it was particularly challenging to kind of decide and choose which 7 herbs we wanted. And some herbs we would work with the root or the leaf at different times of the year. So did we want them to feature in both sections, or were they going to appear in one? So nettle, for example, is only in leaf, but hawthorn is in flower and in the seed slash fruit element of air, because we work quite differently with those two energetically. And so yeah, there was an interesting process of letting it all percolate and shifting around. I mean, this project has taken us actually over 16 or more years to really come to fruition.
I
And
was actually, it was before I was pregnant, so I looked at it the other day.
18 years to
Yes,
19 years,
yes,
yeah.
it's a long time we've been working on creating these cards, and that's why there's a real depth of complexity within them.
Yeah, I was gonna ask like how your process went of choosing which herbs to include. I mean, after 19 years, I can't imagine that must have been easy to narrow down 7 per element or so.
No, we started with many more.
Oh, I'm sure.
We started with many more, but what we have done is we've developed a set of medicinal drops that are energetic and emotional drops, where we've blended the herbs into tinctures and syrups, and we've made medicines. And all of the herbs that are in our oracle also make up our drops range, which we've worked with different apprentices, training people up to practice sensory herbalism. So we've had a lot of practical experience working with these herbs with many people over the years as well, and seeing how they work in combination.
Yeah, and I think it was the plants really that we always think that, that knowing several herbs really, really well, like having a bunch of best friends of your closest mates, you can work with in much more diverse and powerful ways than knowing the names of 100 herbs, but not having actually met or grown or harvested those herbs. And I think really what we had to do was look at the herbs that that have been most prevalent and had the most powerful messages, and make sure that they were depicted within the cards. For example, the elder, there was no way that we could have just the elderberry and not the elderflower. So we have both of those in there because we work so differently and they're both so important. And the energetics are so different of the flower and the berry. So yeah, there was a process, but I think in the end it's the herbs that really told us they needed to be in there.
They tend to do that, don't they?
They do. They have a way. They have their ways.
Oh my gosh, yes, especially if you're like making incense or something, they tend to tell you which ones want to be included.
Mhm.
Mm.
Well, we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back in just a moment. All right, and welcome back. So, with your deck, how do you hope that people might use this deck in their daily lives? Like, do you hope they can have like a ritual with it practically, or like have like a practical use for it, use it in a spiritual sense? What were your thoughts with it?
We've So we run a community interest company, which is which has at its heart a desire to help people to connect with plants. And we see that if people can connect with certain plants that grow around them, they will care for their locale much more. And this will have a knock on effect. And that's how we see a paradigm shift, by more and more people slowing down, being more observant, and really appreciating what grows around them. And the deck has at its heart that as an intention. Each one, if you pull one card and you go to the booklet, each one of them has a set of reflections for people to have a little ponder about, and an affirmation. So people can work very much in a thoughtful way, but we also hope that they go outside and actually find their herb, maybe bring their herb into a window box or the garden, and create that connection, that physical connection with the plant, both medicinally and spiritually.
Yeah, it's a way of bringing the nature connection that we hope for in as well, into the home and into your day-to-day life, especially if people haven't got access to many wild spaces, or are maybe a bit feeling disconnected. It's a way that you can connect in with this plant medicine and magic in your home, or anywhere. And they're in such a lovely sized box. Actually, we were a bit concerned at first that they were going to be small, but they're so beautiful. They're in this hard box that's just perfect for fitting into any bag, and you can take them with you. And if you feel like you need a bit of guidance, or you're a bit confused about something, you can just pull one card. Or if you've got a bigger question, then you can sit and do a bit more of a detailed spread. We've got different options for how to work with them within the book. But any way that people feel that they want to do it, we've recommended every new and full moon that you pull a card. But it can also be a daily practice of just sitting for a moment, creating that time and space for yourself with a cup of herbal tea, and just seeing what the cards want to say that day.
Honestly, I'm thinking of like some things that I would do. I'm thinking about how I live in a very I don't know, a area that has a lot of cars and roads and not as much wildlife and greenery as I would like for
Mm.
myself to be living in. And I'm thinking about if I were to take these cards and pull ones that I know that some of these plants are native within my area somewhere, and going on a little adventure of maybe finding it.
Yeah.
Yeah, lovely. Exactly. Yeah, so finding those plants that you might be a little bit familiar with, and reflecting on those cards as well. Or like we said, like if you had noticed something particular, like daisies that year growing, and you can come in, look through the book, see if that herb is in the book, and then sit and reflect on the card, read the words that we've written about it, the medicine, and just see what relevance that has to your life in that moment.
Yeah, it's kind of like using it like a guide.
Yeah, like being able to clear your mind. When I work with the cards, I really enjoy coming to, I have an altar space and I like to light my candle and put myself into a meditative frame of mind, even by just taking 2 or 3 deep breaths. And I like to have a bit of a shake and clear off the energy of the day. And once I'm centered, asking. So I often, if I have a choice, for example, I'll often ask the cards just to give me a bit of guidance. And I love to pick just one card and really have the time to look at the imagery on the card and let myself feel into what I'm actually seeing before I go to any books to read. I like to take a pen and write down what the visual imagery is evoking in me. And when you get familiar with a deck that you're working with, there are often cards that come up again and again for you. And then there's an emotional response as well to note down as part of the guidance. But yes, they are guides, and the herbs and the elements have got such amazing intelligence that comes through in the imagery. So it's lovely to be able to sit and ask. Today I picked for myself the borage card, and borage or starflower we have alongside the vibe of navigate and a picture of the flower on a compass and then the stars in the sky. So that really gave me a sense of confidence that I'll be able to find my way through what I am navigating right at the moment. And I also know that borage is a wonderful adrenal tonic, great for supporting energy when you're moving through times of stress or challenge. So I could personally take on the idea, the guidance that I might need to take some starflower oil and bring that into my diet a bit more.
Now, let me ask, with these herbs, in both of your opinions or experience, do you think that there is a difference between using herbs medicinally versus using them magically?
So that's a very interesting question to us because medicine, so we've been trained in medicine to study clinical herbalism here in the UK. It's a 4-year degree, and we were trained in hospital. As we've mentioned earlier, we were in white coats with stethoscopes, and we're trained to diagnose. We were also trained in a laboratory to be able to extract chemical compounds. We were versed in pharmacology and pharmacognosy. So we had this very heavyweight scientific training. But we went out into the fields together and we learnt song and prayer, and we worked out what stones and crystals and other elemental forces went with each herb. We studied astrology, and we came to the understanding that medicine, true medicine, is both the science and the magic. So when we work with herbs, whether it be for a sore throat, giving someone something to help soothe their throat, or to work through the ancestral lines of trauma to be able to cut through on a more esoteric way, we're still working with the same plants that we know and love and understand, that have all of those facets around them. So we believe the most important thing is actually knowing your plants, and or knowing where you get your plants from, that they've been grown and tended and loved by someone that you might know or respect. It's for us, the underpinning of it all is actually where they're from, where you're getting the plants from, whether it makes potent magic or medicine.
And I think one of our real missions or desires is that there is this re-merging of the idea of the more magical being part of medicine, and that those two things don't have to be separate. So that there's a layer of understanding that we don't have to choose one or the other. So we have talked about that we were trained to understand compounds within plants, and we don't want to reject the science of plants because it really helps us in our medicinal practices, but we can help that, and we can work with that understanding to help us understand the more magical aspects. Hawthorn, for example, is a herb that has this special affinity with the blood vessels that provide the heart muscle with blood to keep it strong and healthy and well supported. And the hawthorn is this amazing heart herb. And on a more kind of emotional level, the hawthorn is very much about courage, and cour being the root of the word for heart in French or in Latin, but also this idea that it comes from the origin of the word courage, that we need our hearts to be strong to have a sense of courage and moving forwards in the world. So we can understand the compounds that are within the hawthorn that are affecting the actual muscle of the heart, but then also work with that to help understand these more emotional or spiritual connotations that the herbs bring us. We call it working with the body as a map to the more emotional and spiritual bodies. And if we can work with the herbs on that more emotional guided level before things set into the physical body as disease, then we can almost help to prevent some things by working on that more magical connected level, if you like, by following what the herbs are telling us in a way.
So, in this topic of working with different herbs and such, do you feel that there are any that are misunderstood or overlooked in herbal practices? And I'm kind of thinking of like the toxic herbs when I'm saying this.
Well, there's a lot misunderstood. We've written a book that's all about the toxic herbs, particularly the Solanaceae herbs, that are sometimes called as well the witching herbs. There's a bunch of the poisons. There's a misunderstanding of what poison is. There's, because of a deep disconnection that we see with nature and herbs in particular with the general public, there's even a fear that goes as far as saying all red berries are poisonous, and people telling children not to go near anything because of the fear of poisoning. And that's just simply a lack of education and understanding. But when we talk about toxicity, when we're thinking medicinally, it's about what's known as a therapeutic margin or a therapeutic dose, because everything has the potential to be poisonous. It's all about the dosages. And the herbs we think of are toxic, we just need to take a very, very small amount, but they're very potent medicines. And many of them are incredible pain relievers. I'm talking about the Solanaceae now, like the Datura or the Belladonna, deadly nightshade, the mandrake or the henbane. They all have the potential to alleviate pain, whether that be through an antispasmodic action, because when our bodies go into any kind of spasm, that creates tension, which then knocks on to our nerves and creates pain. And when you think historically, one of the most useful things we can draw on from medicine is a way to alleviate suffering. But yes, there's much misunderstanding about those herbs that are sometimes thought of as very dark and scary. We think of henbane as one of the most fun, jovial, a bit of a joker type of herb.
These herbs are herbs that we work with as medical herbalists in our practice, but here in the UK we're actually put on a schedule, so like a restricted list that said that only practitioners could work with them. And on the back of that there came a lot of fear around working with them. And we've done loads of research into this because they're some of our favourite herbs to work with in clinical practice, as well as more magically in ritual and different ways. But that we became aware that the use of those herbs in practice was really dying out, and that people weren't being taught so much about how to confidently apply them in clinical practice. So we've been working to also teach herbalists how they can revive these herbs back into their practice. And this is where that real marriage of the magical and the medicinal come together. And in the book that we wrote about the poisons or the witching herbs, we really look at where that place is, where that severance has happened. And those herbs have a lot of fear around them in both the kind of magical circles and also the more clinical medical circles, but were some of the mainstay of herbal practice, 40, 50 years ago. So we've been really working with reviving the knowledge around those plants, because so much of fear-based approaches comes from lack of knowledge and understanding. So we're really all about proliferating that. And what we recommend is that people grow the herbs, or if they find the herbs, they draw the herbs, but that we can reconnect with these plants in that way. We don't need to take big doses or any doses of them. Actually, we can just sit with the plants and watch them grow and learn about them in that way. It can be really profound learning just to plant a seed and watch it grow. So there's a lot of misunderstanding around those herbs. Datura does feature in the Oracle deck as a shape-shifting card, and Datura has a lot of mythology around the origins of the werewolf. And we really see Datura as helping to support the different shifting roles that we might play in life, but also if we want to play with that real idea of shape-shifting and becoming someone else, if it might be a theatrical performance or going out and donning yourself up or whatever it might be, that Datura really teaches about embodying different aspects of ourselves and feeling comfortable within that.
Well, I definitely appreciate you touching on this and telling me about how you are both doing the work to try to teach clinicians about some of these herbs that may have a not great reputation or maybe misunderstood. A part of the reason I ask is, as myself, and I'm sure you all definitely know, and some of the listeners, witchcraft especially has a long history with using different herbs that are considered toxic, but using them in different ways that it can create a different experience that does not have a lethal end to it.
Yeah, and just to pick up on that, the idea that the herbs are misunderstood, I believe, or we believe, that witchcraft is misunderstood, and women, especially women connected to wildness and their sacred sexuality, their power and their sex, and it interlinks because a lot of these herbs were part of the European flying ointments. And we've done a lot of work looking at the history of the flying ointments and this idea that witches flew on their broomsticks. And we know that that's got to do with wanking rites and wanking rituals, which as well has a lot of misunderstanding and fear and apprehension, because there's been so much suppression and oppression of the sacred feminine.
Yes, I read in a book about a year or so ago, and I can't remember who exactly said it because I think the author was actually quoting somebody else, but I might be wrong. But it said something to the effect of witchcraft or magic is the science of tomorrow or the science that can't yet be explained. And I really liked hearing that quote because I think back in the day when we were not as scientifically advanced as we are now, sometimes people just thought everything was just because of magic. But if magic, I don't know, like if Hollywood magic, for example, was a thing that occurred, I think that it would just be another branch of science.
Mm.
So I think that there is definitely some overlap between magic and science. Um, and yeah, tying it with herbs, of course, as well.
Yeah,
Well,
definitely. And there's whole branches of science that are studying the paranormal and different experiences and trying to explain them. And one of my favorite things about science is that we can't fully comprehend or understand where consciousness arises from in a scientific form, yet it's so studied is part of science, and that whole kind of mystical element of the study of consciousness. And we're really tapping into that when we're connecting with the plants. This idea of bringing the imagination forth and letting ourselves run wild with it a little bit with the plants and seeing what we can create alongside these brilliant plant allies.
oh, it's so fascinating to think about. I feel like we can get down a whole very deep rabbit hole discussion just about that.
Definitely.
Well, to wrap things up, let me ask you both: what if you could share one lesson about what the plant world has taught you over the years? What would that be?
That's a hard question.
Oh, I
Um,
know. I'm essentially asking after all your decades of experience.
yeah, it's a life. Well, just off the cuff, the plant world has taught me to let go of thinking or believing that I've got any control and letting them lead. So I know that my life is in flow when I go outside and I talk to the plants. I say good morning to my plant friends. I greet them. I tend to them and I interact with them. And I don't try and impose my own control on things. Let them just lead me along the way and send me little ideas.
I love that because I definitely talk to my plants too, especially when I'm cutting like flowers to put in a vase and I have to cut the ends off. I always say sorry.
And I think plants have got great lessons of resilience as well, the way that they peep up between the cracks in the pavements and over the edges of the flower beds and really have this will to survive and thrive. And when we've had some of our most challenging times through running the business or various health issues or supporting our families, whatever it might be, the plants are this constant reminder and this constant connection to the cycles and that things will pass and restore and renew. And I think that's been a really important lesson that's helped us to keep going. We've been working together for 25 years now, and someone asked me earlier today how we've managed to work together for that long without falling out. And I think the main reason is because of the plants, because we've got this connected goal that we want to support the plants getting back into people's consciousness and people being more kind and conscious of the plants.
No, I think that's beautiful. I think plants can definitely teach us a lot about resilience. As you mentioned, them growing up in between the cracks, it's quite impressive.
Mm. Yeah, nature taking back over.
As she should. Well, Fee and Cass, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been such a pleasure talking to you and hearing about your decades worth of wisdom and sharing about your Oracle deck. For the listeners who want to connect with you and get in contact with you after this, how can they find you and where can they purchase your book? Or where can they purchase your Oracle deck?
So the Oracle deck in the States, any online or hopefully local bookstores, if you ask for it, they should be able to get them in because they're from all major book distributors should be able to have access to them. Or any bigger online retailers of books. We don't personally post overseas, but the publisher do have distributors there, so you should be able to get them online. But you can connect with us via Seed Sisters with an AS on the end of sistas.co.uk. And we've got loads of free resources on there. We've got a blog. You can sign up to our newsletters and find out what we're doing, what's going on, recipes, all sorts of bits and bobs that we send out once a week as well. So we'd love to have people on board there.
Amazing. Well, I will have the link to your site in the episode description. And for anybody who wants to get in contact with me, you can find me on Instagram at Seeking Witchcraft, on Facebook as Seeking Witchcraft Podcast. And if you would like to support the show, you could do so on patreon.com/Seeking Witchcraft. Thank you, Fia and Kaz, again so much for coming on. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening because we have quite a time difference between our recording. So I appreciate your time coming on today. And thank you all for listening. Bye.